better? That looks better. Right. Hello. I'm hoping you all can see me. It doesn't give me very much feedback, unfortunately, about anyone's watching. I'm not sure whether what you can kind of see, but at the moment we will be looking at sound mainly. So we'll be starting off today by having a look at kind of how to mark up a script if you're mixing sound for it, why you do that, and kind of all the paperworky stuff you need to do with that. So to start off with, let's have a look at a play. So this play is Noises Off by Michael Frayn. It's what the play is, it doesn't matter. Basically, hello. Sorry. So basically, this will just serve as kind of something we can use to reference. So let's ignore the first couple pages. If we look at the cast list, you can see we have different cast. So, sorry, these are the names of the actors in it, characters in it, sorry. And somewhere in here should be the name of all the characters in the play. There. So, I'm not sure if you can see that. We have Dottie, Belinda, Gary, Selsdon, Brooke, Frederick, Robin, and Lloyd. So those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are the eight characters that we have in this play. So what we would first do is, if we're sound mixing, so audio 1 for a show, we would get the script and we'd look at it. We'd kind of flick through and see kind of who says what, who does what, etc., etc. So immediately, first line, first page of the thing. The disembodied voice of Lloyd Dallas, the director of Nothing On, replies from somewhere out in the darkness of the auditorium. So by reading that, I can go immediately, right, I'm going to need a mic for someone that's not on stage. That's fine. If you're doing something like a musical, which I've got an example of underneath, then it would be slightly different. I'll show you how that's done. But this is just for a play if you were needing to put mics on all the actors. You've got a few sound effects, so like the sound of a key in the lock. Just kind of have a flick through, see what everything is. So once you've done that, you can then come up with what's called a mic plot. Essentially, that's a piece of paper that says who has what mic. I don't have a copy with me at the moment, but I'll quickly draw you one out. So basically, your pad of paper here, you would take the list of characters. So we go back to the start. Actually that's not the list of characters in the play. It'll be in here somewhere, I hope. Dottie, oh no, that is all of them. I think I've got myself confused now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, anyway, so we would take the names of the characters. So we have Dottie, we have Lloyd, we have Gary, we have Brooke, we have Poppy, we have Frederick, we have Belinda, we have Tim, and we have Selsden. So, you can see now we've got the list of all our characters here. I would then go and have a look at a synopsis of the scenes. So you can see in here, we only have 3 acts. What I might want to do is I might want to break that down further, and depending on how this player split up. So for now, just for sake of simplicity, I'll put the 3 acts as if they were just 3 scenes. So we'll just draw a line there. Most of the time you would be able to do this on a computer. I'm just drawing it out so it's a bit more kind of visual for you. He's a mod because I think this is the Concept Theatre YouTube channel, so I think he's an admin on that from a while ago. So what we have is we have this acts. So let's call them scenes for now. I know they're Act 1, Act 2 and Act 3, but we'll call it Scene 1. So we'll put S1, we'll put S2, and we'll put S3. Now, I know this isn't strictly true of this play in particular, but let's say, for example, that in Scene 1, we had Dottie, Lloyd, Gary, and Brooke in, and none of the second characters. If I was doing this just on paper, I would put a little X or a tick or something. So I do that, and that there. So that tells me that in Scene 1, these 4 people need to have mics. If then in Scene 2, I have the other half of the cast, or almost half, then I put crosses there. And let's say Scene 3, we have everyone. So, here we go. So you can see now, I know in Scene 1, we have these people, in Scene 2, we have these people, and in Scene 3, we have all of them. So, basically, what we do is we go, right, this person and this person, they're not in the same scene for Scene 1 and Scene 2, so we could put them on the same mic. But we look at Scene 3, they're in the same scene together. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to go to the director or the producer or whoever and say, right, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mics. This kind of alleviates the problem of having to do mic changes. And then what I do is I'd write next to them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This means that all of these people would have that mic number on. So if you were the audio person, what you do is on the mic, you put a bit of tape kind of across this bit, and then write a big number on, like number 1, number 2, etc., etc. And that just tells the mic person, so A2, audio 2, or sound 2 sometimes, that just tells them kind of what that person will be doing. Sorry, who the mic should go on. So let's say you've done that for all the scenes in the whole thing, and you've got your mic plot and it carries on further and further. That's great. You make a copy for yourself and you give another copy to your audio and your mic person. Now, go back to script, and you want to know whose mic you want on at certain times. So, Mrs. Clackett. So we look down the list and we go, oh, there is no Mrs. Clackett. Well, this is where kind of reading the thing at the start helps. If you see where it says here, Dottie Oatley plays Mrs. Clackett, that's because this play is a play kind of within a play. So what you need to do is you need to look at it and you need to go, right, Mrs. Clackett, that's Dottie. Dottie is number 1. So then you'd in the book, you'd go and put a nice big 1. She says quite a lot, then Dotty says a line. Now Dotty, as we know, is Mrs. Clackett. So, because it's a change of character name, so you don't get confused, I normally just put a 1 and then like a dotted line around it. What that tells me is mic number 1 is already on from here, but just to remind me to keep it on. Then Lloyd. Lloyd is number 2. That's quite handy. So I put 2. Then we keep going down. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then that gives you, if you just see there, that gives you the list of character names. Sorry, character mics for that scene. So if you go back to the start of the scene, what I generally like to do is I like to know which mics I need to be switching on at the start. So let's say for the first couple of pages, I just need mics 1 and mics 2 on. So I do 1 and 2, and then I write on, and give it a nice big underline so I know it's going on. And let's say action continues for a few pages. And then let's skip right forward to the end of the scene, or the act, sorry, which is here. So I would write, so everyone's kind of finished, I would write 1 and 2, and then I do off. Now, I know I've skipped over a massive chunk of the text, so you have other people coming in and out at certain times. You basically write the same thing. You put number plus another number if necessary, or plus however many, then write off and just underline it. If it's the end of an act like this and everyone's mic is going off, write all, circle it, and say off. That tells you you're switching off everybody's mic, because actors quite like to talk as soon as they get off stage. So that's kind of the basics of writing mic notes into a book and how to use a plot sheet. Now, if I show you this, this is Grease, the show I did last week that was live streamed. You can see if it's something like a musical, it can get a lot more complicated. So you can see, I mean, I was kind of hurrying with this, so I've got 1 plus 8 plus 5 plus 4, and then, yeah, just write on as well. And that basically tells me for that entire scene, up until, unless anything changes, I need those 4 mics on. So what I do is on the desk, I'd have my mute buttons, and I'd unmute all of those people when the scene started, so they could all say their lines. And you can see here, 1, 4, and 5 go off, but I know I've still got 8, so 8 carries on because they do a song there. If I skip forward a bit more, and just give you another example. This is one between 2 main characters, so 2 and 1 on. You don't have to put them in the right order, so it doesn't have to be 1 and 2. That can help sometimes. It depends kind of how you want to work. Oh, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that. So you can see here number 11. That's when 11 comes on, so they're saying a line there. And I think at some point they leave during the scene. Oh no, they don't. But anyway, you can see here, right again, all off. So for a musical, it's very similar. It's just with some of the songs, you might want to have everyone off, and sometimes you might want to have quite a lot of mics on at one time. Right, next thing I'm going to talk to you about is how you set up your sound desk once you've marked up a script like this. So I quickly show you. So what I'll do is I'll draw a crude picture of a sound desk. So we have along, can you see that? Yep. We have along the bottom our faders. So let's say, for the sake of argument, we have 4 faders. Then we have the mute button up here. Like that. And then above that, we might have a few different adjustment things. This one is gain. I've just realised that's covered up by that. Move that there. Yep, so we've got gain, we have mute, and then we have all the faders down at the bottom. So on your sound desk, what you need to remember is that each kind of vertical line is one kind of channel, basically. This is true of all analog desks, where you'll have this and then you'll have a billion other things going kind of further up and further up. On digital desks, some of the parameters will kind of be shared. So you'd click a little button to select it, and then it would come up in a different display. But depending on what you're doing, kind of what kind of desk you're using, it will depend on what happens. So let's say you were miking the show. It had four actors in. All of them were wearing mics. Start off. You have numbers written down the side. Of each fader. So you have 0 here, like so. And then at the top you might have +10 or +20 or something. The bottom is -infinity. As you can imagine, if it's at the top it's going to be louder, if it's at the bottom it's going to be silent. And on top you have a physical fader. In fact, if I quickly show you, I think I've got, some MIDI faders. So we'll use these as our stand-in faders for a sound desk. So, when you start on a show, the first thing you'll want to do after you've done kind of all the paperwork side of things is do what's called a sound check. So, to do a sound check, you have your 4 faders, start with them all the way down, and turn the gain all the way down at the top as well. Then you start with number 1. You make sure all their radio and stuff is on. You make sure it's on the right frequency. Your mic person should really be doing that, but depending on the show, it might be you. And it's always good to lend a hand anyway. So, making sure their gain is all the way down. You make sure your main fader, wherever it is on the side, is set at where you'll be for the show, which should be 0. And then you bring up your first fader up, a bit sticky, up to 0. There we go. Now nothing will happen because gain is at -infinity as well. The gain is basically a knob version of these faders here, but you don't really touch your gain once you've started. So what you do is you make sure that it's 0, and you'd have the actor say, just count up in numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So you very slowly turn the gain up until it reaches a point at which you can hear the actor nice and clearly, but you don't go too high as to have feedback. Notice that the fader should stay at 0. I'll explain why that is in just a minute. So you turn up the gain as high as it kind of is, as high as it can go before it starts giving feedback, and just a little bit below that, so it's not too loud, and it's not going to risk feedback if they start shouting. Then you do the same with number 2, bring it up to 0, adjust the gain. Number 3, bring it up to 0, adjust the gain. Number 4, bring it up to 0 and adjust the gain. Now you can see, because I brought all the faders up to 0, they're all pretty much at the same point. This means when I'm actually doing the show, all I have to do is unmute their mics. Don't have to worry about changing levels or anything, because everyone should be balanced against each other. If, say for example, there's a solo number and number 1 is singing with number 2 and number 3 and 4 are just providing backing vocals, I can push 1 and 2 up a little bit, or I can bring 3 and 4 down. Let's say number 3 is their voice is going slightly, I can move their fader up slightly. What you want to have happen is 0 should be when everything's perfect and everyone is exact, and everyone needs to be exactly the same level. You should try and set it at that during the sound check. This isn't always possible, but I mean, if you can, that's always best. That means when you move it up, you're only adjusting it a little bit. And when you end up at the end of a show, you'll have something that looks maybe like that or whatever. They'll only move a little bit away from 0. This saves you trying to go, well, that person's there, and that person's there for the entire show. Because then as soon as person number 2 needs a bit of a boost, you push them up, you can't remember where they need to go back to for the chorusy stuff. So yeah, making sure they're at 0, what's also known as being at unity, because they're all on the same, you're all at the same point. So let's go back to our noises off script and have a quick look. So let's say there's a bit of an overture or something before it starts. We would wait. Once the overture is kind of almost at the end, we would press unmute and unmute. The mute buttons, it might say mute, it might glow red, it might do something, but when you press it once, it will mute it. When you press it again, it will unmute it. Same across all of the different faders. So we can see 1 and 2 needs to be on, so we press unmute on both of those. Now let's say number 1, it's opening night, they're feeling a little bit scared, so they're fairly quiet. You might want to nudge them up just a little bit. If it's something that you know is going to be on for the entire run or the entire show, you might very, very carefully adjust the gain just up a little bit or down a little bit if needed. But most of the time, any small minor adjustments during the show should be done just with the faders. So you can see she says stuff, and then number 2 comes in. Now you've already unmuted number 2, so this is where your stage management team will help. You need to make sure that actors aren't speaking when they have mics on and they're off stage, because you can see it's about a page and a half since we've turned on mic number 2. And they haven't had anything to say. So they might go, oh, they won't have switched my mic on yet. No, they're going to have the mic on. So yeah, making sure during rehearsals, when they have mics, that they're nice and disciplined and they're paying attention to you. Now, that's all well and good if you've just got 4 mics, you're just unmuting. Let's say you're doing a big musical like Grease, and you need to have chorus, and you need to have leads, and you have different groups of chorus. What you can do is you can use something called DCAs. Now, what a DCA is basically, think of it as a group of faders getting put together. So let's say this is DCA 1. We have DCA 1, and that is 1 and 2. DCA 2 is 3 and 4. And then DCA 3 is 1, 2, 3, and 4. These would be pretty much exactly the same as these. They'd be on faders. So let's say this is DCA 1 now. You'd have, when you move DCA 1 up, 1 and 2 will increase their volume. What you can do, so let's go back to these being the channels, is let's say 1 and 2, you have 1 slightly higher. When you move the DCA fader, this one, it will move them proportionally. So it won't physically move the faders, but think of it as if it's moving them up like that. So 1 will always be higher if you set it to be higher. You also have the same thing with mute buttons. So let's set up another fader over here. and I'll just grab another fader. Here we go. So same rules apply. When you're doing sound check, make sure they're at 0. And let's say 1 and 2, they're not in this scene. So you mute that. What will happen is the mutes of these will just be muted. You can't then unmute them individually. You have to unmute the DCA. This means you can have, let's say 1 and 2 are again your kind of leads. 3 and 4 are your chorus. You'd have 1 and 2 on DCA 1, and then during the chorus bit you might bring up DCA 2 a bit. And just get another fader out. There we go. So imagine there's another thing there. DCA 2. So if you remember DCA 2, it's got 3 and 4 on it, so it's got these two on. And you know for the whole song you want the leads to be slightly louder than the chorus. So you might bring them up slightly, you might bring them down slightly. What that then doing is the equivalent of bringing those up slightly or bringing those two down slightly. It's just a nice way to kind of group them together. Again, if I go back to my Grease thing, you can see especially for the big numbers, I split the groups into different DCAs. So in Grease there are the Pink Ladies and the Burger Boys. I did DCA 1 is the girls, DCA 2 is the boys. There you go, you see it's exactly the same as just writing a number. I do DCA 1 and I do DCA 2. I bring them up and I bring them down depending on what I need to mix. While you still got that happening, you can still individually mix different channels, like if someone is slightly louder or someone's a bit out of tune, so you bring them down slightly. So you still have that kind of individual control. It just gives you a kind of bigger range, especially if you're unmuting and muting everything all the time. It helps you not get too confused. Right, we have 2 minutes left. So are there any questions? If so, just pop them in the chat and I will try to answer them. Give you guys a couple of seconds because I know it's delayed from when I'm actually speaking. Anyone got any questions? Oh, pop that in there. Well, I can do a bit of Inception. Oh, it's not focusing very well. Yeah, you can see the video twice. So yeah, today I've taught you about groups, DCA, sorry. I've taught you about channels, the basics of kind of how a mixing desk works, how to mark up a script, how to... Thanks. It's not a question, gonna be honest. Yeah, how to mark up a script, and kind of what you need to do when you get to a show. Right. If that's everything, then I will end the stream. I'll give you a couple more seconds. As my mix between the different cameras. So every time I start typing something, it doesn't work too well. No? Okay, cool. So next week we will be going back to lighting. If I just switch over to this camera. So yeah, next week we'll be going back to lighting, and I'll be showing you some more advanced kind of lighting things, kind of effects maybe. I can do all that thankfully on my computer because I've brought everything home. We'll be talking about how exams are run with the lighting software that we have, because it's slightly different to running it normally. At the moment, there are no lighting exam. There are no drama exams, and there are no performances coming up. But if we do get anything in the diary, I'll let you guys know and try and get you booked onto that. So yeah, I think that's everything for today. So yeah, thank you for watching, and tune in again next week at 3 o'clock on Friday. Thank you.